Of the Music Shop. It is me, your hostess with the mostest, Jaybee, and I'm here with my co-host, the always lovely, the always wonderful, the always beautiful, Mr. Josh. How are you, love?
Wonderful. And how are you?
I'm great. So I'm super excited about what we're talking about today. But before we get into all of that, so I heard that you have a new vehicle.
I do. It is only the fifth vehicle for the year. But yes, we are the proud new owners of a Toyota Prius.
You're such a lesbian. I love you.
I know. Well,
Uh,
we needed something fuel efficient, and it was either that or walk on our hands.
you know, sometimes walking on your hands isn't a bad thing. Sometimes you have to do what you got to do.
Mhm.
Um, so today we actually kind of went back and forth about the album we wanted to do this week
Yes.
or this month because it was your turn, obviously, to pick. And we like to go into albums in granular detail, probably far more detail than we need
Exhausting detail.
to. But um, you had chosen an album, or you were kind of waffling between two albums, and I had brought up that I had listened to the Ilya self-titled album, and I was like, this was a mood. This whole thing was an era, and as I was kind of looking up stuff, I was like, we should really do this. We should do this album at some point. And you were like, well, why don't we just do it next?
Why indeed? It really is kind of all the many albums that we could talk about, and there are many, this is probably one of the best. Certainly one of the ones with the most longevity.
Yes, it is an album that still sounds fresh. Still sounds like something that you could hear on the radio, and it is with it being recently released or re-released. We're not going to get into all of that because that's mess. But with it being recently re-released, it's kind of brought it back to the forefront. It really kind of brought Aaliyah that legacy back to the forefront, where people are talking about you know her place in music and really what could have been had we not lost her at such an early age.
Absolutely. There is always the temptation when an artist is lost to immediately project and wonder what else they might have done. Um, so that's a reasonable thing that we would have expected in the years that followed her death. But it, in a way, it was good that her catalog wasn't really available for streaming in other ways, because it's now reintroduced her to the zeitgeist, right? Like it's sort of reinvigorated this, um, the way that we think about her in a way that we otherwise might not have. So maybe it was a good thing.
I mean, I definitely think that in because we didn't have it. Now, mind you, I have had this album in many different iterations, both legal and illegal. But it's I think her not having this album available on streaming services really kind of made it a hidden gem for a lot of people, where it was like
Sure.
we didn't because it wasn't available all the time. It was you couldn't just go and listen to it. It really made the re-release kind of something special and kind of made it a moment, and a way for us to think about what her legacy was, like I said today, I was thinking about kind of what Aaliyah in that time period meant to me, because it was something. There were two artists when I had this idea that I was going to be a dancer and do this and this and that. There were two artists that I was like, for sure, these are the two people I want to work with, and it's Aaliyah and Janet Jackson.
Hmm.
And like I had a plan, you know what I mean? It was like this was how I was going to do it. And I said, I was like, Janet is the architect. Janet wrote the blueprint, but Aaliyah built the foundation. You know what I mean? Like for that
Yeah.
all of these new girls and and even some of the older ones, they followed this blueprint that was, kind of really paved by the Janets and the Aaliyahs, of mixing dance and musicality and singing and not having the most powerful voice. You know what I mean? Like they can't belt a ballad in the way that like maybe a Jill Scott or an Erica or that they can do, but they have a voice that is strong enough that they can carry a tune and marketable enough like in their personality. Like there was that Aaliyah girl persona persists even to this day. That kind of bad girl, but not like kind of tomboyish girl. Um, that we see from like Tinashe and what's that new girl that did that song with Nicki Minaj that everybody's mad at because she's like a black chick, but she's not. I don't remember her name. It's fine.
That could be anyone.
It could be any of them. But that you don't have to be a Whitney Houston,
Yeah.
to find the success and be those like because like Mary J. Blige she can sing her ass off, but like Mary J. Blige can't really give you a two step. Her dancing is known because it's not very good. You know what I mean? Like she gives you a walk, but like to be able to do the choreography and like really bring this baby girl persona to the forefront, like Aaliyah really did that. Yeah, and like I said, you see it. I think you were right, and the not having the music readily available made it heightened the mystique. Having access to those albums and those songs was kind of like it's like cred. It was like, oh yeah, I got that. I can listen. I got that because you can't get it on streaming services, and there's a whole generation that doesn't really know a lot about who Aaliyah is or what Aaliyah was doing.
A couple years ago, Katy Perry had a halftime show on the Super Bowl, and she invited Missy Elliott up on stage. And there were a whole slew of tweets from the young folks saying, "Who is this lady? She's awesome." So yeah, there was work to be done to educate the young ones.
It's and the reason that I wanted to pick the Aaliyah album in particular is because it's her last album. One in a Million's great. I love that album. 4-Page Letter. We can talk all day about how amazing that is, but the songs from the Aaliyah sessions, even some of the ones that didn't make the album but made like the I Care For You album, which essentially is still part of that Aaliyah era because it's all songs that were made during those studio sessions.
Yeah.
That I think those kind of really tell a story in a way that I think maybe One in a Million was very like, these are individual songs that are, radio friendly. Any one of them could have been a single. Any one of them could have been something that was, you know, there was a video put out and mass produced and great. But like the Aaliyah album, I felt like from the first track to from We Need a Resolution all the way down to What If, which is one of the bonus tracks on the album, really told this story about a relationship. And, without kind of giving too many details as to who it is or, because Aaliyah didn't write her music. It was just, but it all felt like it was personal to what she was going through at that time. She had the very high profile relationship with R. Kelly, which we now know, we knew back then, that it wasn't cool, but like.
Yeah, eyebrows were raised even then.
Yeah.
But especially now.
But, we were all like, but he made good music, so it's fine. Mm-hmm. That's a conversation for another music show. But I think even going into, like the all of these songs are about kind of heartbreak in some way. And that feeling of, things aren't cool, things aren't going good, but I got to keep moving. I got to keep, I'm telling you how to treat me, and then when you kind of get into, and I really One of the things that I remember most about this era, before we get into the actual songs, are the. Do you remember the commercials for this album?
No, I don't.
So there were a series of anime style commercials that were done for the as the lead up in the release of this album, that were essentially like her as this like ninja goddess warrior thing, per
Oh, I've
person.
seen stills of that,
Yes.
the character. Okay.
And like it was her going into, her superhero and driving the Aaliyah jet, and like it was really dope. And then I think it's something that like Britney has Spears has used for one of her videos, that kind of animated, um, you know, anime girl persona. And I actually just saw a couple days ago that for the re-release, so they got the artists to and made another commercial of her like digging, really going into the vault and stealing the music from the vault. So like it's just this really kind of cool, if you're into anime or into anything like that, like it's just really cool, like what could have been had she still been around, like where would that persona or that era have gone. And I think that's really the biggest thing about this, the tragedy of what happened, not just the loss of her life, but the the loss of what could have been, what this era could have been. um we make the joke that without if Aaliyah hadn't passed, there wouldn't be no Ashanti. um
I've made the joke that it's outrageous that we lost baby girl, and yet Ashanti still walks this earth unharmed.
just checking in, just clocking into the daggone grocery store each and every week. So to get into the album itself, so this album was released on July 7th of 2001. Um, and it was, for me, like I said, I was working at a music store, ironically, when this album released. And I remember it originally was a flop.
Really?
Yeah, it originally did not do well
Huh.
in the beginning. Like it was, the lot of critical acclaim, but people really were like, because that was right around like Napster was really going off. People had the album, but they weren't buying it
Mm.
because you could just download it off the internet. And so it really was kind of this moment where, you know people had the album and listened to the album and was like, oh, this album is great, but commercially it was not seen as going well. The We Need a Resolution video came out with Aaliyah looking like Queen of the Damned, and with the snake, and all of that, and like they really did a lot of work to push it, but it was just that weird time period in music where like it was pre-streaming, but like Napster. It's kind of the beginning of the end for those, because you remember prior to that, like it was nothing for an album to come out and sell like 3 million copies that first week.
Mm-hmm.
It was just nothing. Like,
And they didn't hesitate to charge you like $21.95 for that album too.
and didn't give a damn. And I had like the special edition, because there were two editions. There was like the regular edition that had just like the red Aaliyah cover, and then there was the special edition that had like the sleeve that had the A. Like I was into it, because at that point I was like super big into like, if there's a collector's edition of an album, I want that collector's edition. It's you already know how I am when it comes to music anyway. But having those collector's editions, I was like, yes, give me all of it. I don't care if it's the same thing, just the same exact damn album as the regular edition. All that was different was it came with a little poster and a sleeve.
Hey, it worked. You fell
It
for
did.
it.
I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. But I also was one of those people who loved the liner notes. That's one of the things I
Yeah.
miss about the streaming era. In the streaming era, is having that liner note booklet where you could kind of go through and read who was involved in the making of the tracks, who the engineer was, and that's kind of how to start this, how we got Timbaland and Missy Elliott as kind of names. Is that, yeah, they were doing kind of their own thing, but like having that sound be attached to those people, like we knew that because of those liner notes.
Yeah,
So
this is the album that taught me that Timbaland's a good producer.
this is the album that taught you that?
Yeah, it
Stupid
is.
But Fly was the one for me.
Well, I didn't know at the time.
What's interesting about that, and this is one of those things that I was going to bring up, Timbaland is the executive producer of this album, but he actually didn't produce most of the tracks.
Wow.
The only song I think he only produced, I've got the notes up here, guys, so that I could be right on this. If I'm not mistaken, the only track that he actually produced was he produced "We Need a Resolution," "I Care for You,"
I want to say
and
Loose Round.
that's it.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
You know, everything else was produced by other people, but he executive produced the album, and they had that sound.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, and it's so let's kind of dig in now. We Need a Resolution.
Excellent way to open an album. The first few notes immediately draw you in, right? That sort of warbly clarinet where you think you're being like transported to Egypt or something. Very seductive.
Yes. Yes.
Great way to kick off an album.
It's one of those songs that when you hear it, you know, there are certain producers that do tags that you hear it and you immediately go, that's this person, that's this person. What I think Timbaland did with this track and really with a lot of stuff is like he doesn't need a producer tag. You can listen to a song and go, that's Timbaland, or somebody that Timbaland is associated with had something to do with that. You know, and I think a lot of the reason why people thought that Timbaland produced the entire album was because like she was involved with that, like Missy Elliott, you know, the super friends as they used to say, and it was you know, Missy Elliott, it was Timbaland, it was Magoo. I love Magoo. If you don't know, the bird is the word. The bird. But like Genuine, all of them, they were all kind of in that musical like super group. And so you just assumed that everything that came out was Timbaland, and it really wasn't. But that, you know, even like the to the lyrics and the way she sings stuff, the way she like pushed her vocals. You know, there were times where like when that last "Am I Supposed to Change," where she kind of goes up, and you're just like, and you had like not heard. Like you said, she's got a good voice, and it's a pretty voice, but like she's not powerful in it. And he managed to kind of bring a power that isn't really there in a lot of other songs.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think if you wanted to showcase sort of the best of what she's capable of, it would be hard to point to another song that would be more indicative of like, here's where she, you know, like of all the menu of options that are available, all the places you could take her, this is the one that best showcases what she's capable of. With very few exceptions, I think that's one of the tracks that stands out because you're right, when that last "Am I Supposed to Change," right, like that, you know, there's a long history of artists who are not belters but who have, you know, either can market themselves or have like a serviceable voice. I'm thinking of Madonna, for example, you know. But
You said it, not me.
what she has is, although she's not what you would call like a belter and that sort of thing, she is, I think, very much capable of doing some beautiful things with her voice.
Right.
And so it's fun to hear that in this track.
And I think that's really what it came down to mostly on this is her ability to be, you know, to be versatile with her voice. And you hear it on other tracks on the album as well, but I think this is the one that like, if it were me, if I were, you know, the person that was like, okay, what are we going to use as the first single? It absolutely would have been "We Need a Resolution."
And incidentally, since going to like being released for streaming, on Sirius XM, you will now hear Aaliyah, and more often than not, it's "We Need a Resolution" that you hear
Yeah.
on the streaming channels.
Then we had Loose Rap, which is a good song. Like, there's no bad songs on this album.
Yeah.
But there are songs that I'm like, it's one of those ones that even be kind of in the beginning, I skipped it. I was like, it's a good song, she's talking her shit, which I love to hear women talk their shit. Like, she's like, look, I'm not, you got to come harder than what you come in to talk to me, and then we have the song that I loved this song when it first came out, and then her dying at this video shoot made me hate this song for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then
But
finally,
it's such a good song.
finally now I can like get into it and get into to what it is and why it's a good song, and that's Rock the Boat. And to me, like, the video makes me feel sad just every time I see it. Like, it's, and I often wonder what that video would have been had it not been the video that she died on. And there's more to say about the video than there is the song, to me, honestly. It's a great song. It's iconic. It's an iconic song.
Yeah.
But there's that scene at the end of the Rock the Boat video where, like, she's underwater and it's the white and she's like floating above, and it's like this very like angelic scene, and you're just like, did you have to tug on my heartstrings? You didn't need to, but great.
In a way, it's a fitting epitaph.
It is.
Her
but it's the song itself it's just like it's like a mid-tempo. If it was a little slower, it would almost be like a ballady kind of song, and that's not usually, especially during that time period in my life. That wasn't necessarily what my flow was. I wanted the dancey songs. I wanted to like get out and and shake my ass. And so when I heard the song before I saw the video, I was like, okay, this is fine. I like it, but it's fine. And then when you saw the video and you were like, oh, like, okay, I see what you can do with this song. But it was still connected, and it will always be, I think, in the zeitgeist, kind of intricately connected to her death.
True.
And so it'll always have this like bittersweet feeling that's in it, that obviously isn't intended in the song itself, but I think that's kind of why I feel the way I do. And I also think it's why it's one of the more popular songs on the album, because I do genuinely think there are better songs on the album than Rock the Boat, but because it is so tied to her last moments, that it just kind of is. It is what it is. It's a fitting tribute, for lack of a better term. And I was wrong. There are 3 songs on this album that Timbaland produced. The third one being "More Than a Woman,"
the next track,
which I love this song. I love this song. I love this video. Everything about this song is like,
another beat that draws you in right away too.
Yeah.
You're thinking, all right, what futuristic city am I being pulled into with this sound?
And Timbaland was really in his like Arabic, Egyptian, kind of Middle Eastern era during this time period. Like, he was getting a lot of influences from the music of that period. And so when you've got that the burn, 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 like that very kind of Indian, Middle Eastern kind of feel to the music, which really fit in well with her voice. It really fit in well with kind of what, the tone and the timbre of what her voice was.
It's so funny to think about the turn of the century. All of a sudden, everybody started pulling Middle Eastern influences into their songs for no reason.
Out of nowhere,
I blame Sting. Sting, and with Desert Rose, I think, was what started this whole mess.
Probably Sting. and then ended with "She's so contagious." One of these days, when we get like a couple of like super popular albums in, we're gonna have to talk about Ready Now.
We'll have to do the Truth Hurts discography.
Which is just Ready Now. As far
Ready
as I'm
now,
concerned.
yeah.
I was wondering why you called. Oh, y'all don't even understand. All right. But yeah, no, I loved More Than a Woman. I thought it was such a great. And interestingly enough, it was supposed to be the second single.
Oh.
And because like there was the video that was shot for it and everything, and they went on ahead and did Rock the Boat first, and then was going to have More Than a Woman be the third single, which is why there's a video for the song after,
Yeah.
the death. But it's, to me, like, I need to watch that video again. I love how it looks and like being inside the, they're inside an engine and you see the pistons around them and they're just doing all of this. There was like, you can't really talk about Aaliyah's albums without talking about her videos.
True.
It's just that they kind of go hand in hand because that's the kind of she was a very much a visual artist. And then we have Never No More, which is a really good. I always imagine this song whenever I think about it in like a smoky jazz club.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like she's singing this song and and this is the first time that you hear her really talk about mature issues, because she's talking about like domestic violence and and all of those things that that can happen in relationships. And prior to that, it had always been like teen love and blah blah blah, that stuff. And then all of a sudden, like, she hits you kind of what we're 5 tracks into the third album, and all of a sudden it's like, I promised myself you wouldn't put your hands on me again. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, and it's quite the journey to go on in this album, right? Because you kick off with "We Need a Resolution." Okay, it's a troubled relationship. Loose Rap, You're Not Doing Enough for Me. Rock the Boat and More Than a Woman, I think, are basically come hither, flirtatious songs,
Right.
for want of a better term. And then suddenly Never No More, which is a sharp left turn
Yeah.
subject matter.
Yeah, and
Um,
and
but
it
it
kind
works.
of it's the ups and downs of a relationship.
Yeah.
I always think of
Which
like
that
rock.
path will be charted throughout this album, right? We'll see more of that. The
Right.
sort of it'll swing, it'll ebb and flow back and forth into love song versus like tumultuous or troubled
Troubled
times.
relationships, and it's such and it's what makes this album so mature. Is it's not all one note. It's not
Mhm.
all. It's not even all either like found love or lost love. It's found love, lost love, you know good love, bad love. It's all of the ways that relationships can go right and wrong. And it's that leads us into "I Care for You," which is, shout out to Missy Elliott for the writing on this song.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a beautiful love song.
it is such a beautiful love song, and it's again has that same kind of smoky jazz club feel, and with the production, and like there's like even that moment in the beginning of the song where she says, "Hey now, baby," and you've got that tingle with the piano.
Yeah.
It just kind of it evokes that feeling of like, you know, I'm in this bar, and I'm in this jazz club, and there's a cigar on the ground, and you can see the wisps of the smoke in the like lights as she's singing this song, and
Mhm.
pouring her heart out to someone, and it's amazing. And then we kind of take another left turn going into like Extra Smooth about this guy who's trying too hard. You know, it's almost like new love, new relationship. They are trying so hard to get at her,
Yeah.
and she's like, "You ain't got to do all that."
If you think about how Never No More has such serious subject matter, and then it transitions into I Care for You, as if to say this is someone who has been through some difficult times and has found a way um, through them or past them to discover or rediscover her profound love for this person. And then you have a series of tracks after it, which are all sort of, I think they're all kind of similar in that they, like Extra Smooth, Read Between the Lines, and even like You Got Nerve are very much like sort of, you need to step up your game
Hmm.
kind of
If you
tracks.
wanna, if you want to keep in with this with me, you got to step your game up, and we can actually put those three together as really kind of like the the three songs that to me are, while I love them, they're the most throwaway on the album.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because they're great songs, they're great, for the album, but like they're the three that don't really go anywhere in terms of like vocally and or like subject matter. They're really step your game up. If you want to talk to me, you got to
Yeah.
be, you got to read between the lines. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that, and the read between the lines one is really like, I know you're cheating. Like I know what you're doing. I know what's happening over here. You know what I mean? And all I have to do is read between the lines. Like I can see the lies that you're telling. But then we get into after those three, and then You Got Nervous. How dare you? Like
Yeah.
how fucking dare you? I can't believe you would do these things to me. Like you would cheat on me. You, who do you think you are? You know what I mean? And then that moves into I Refuse, which
Yeah.
listen, y'all.
I, I Refuse is probably her most like what operatic
Yeah, it is.
in more ways than one.
I think that this is her most theatrical song.
Yeah.
Vocally, I think it's one of her best. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's her. If someone was to say, "What is a song that truly encapsulates the best of the Aaliyah that we could have seen?"
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's "I Refuse." It is. It is the one that like it tells the song itself tells a self-contained story. Um, it shows where she could have gone, be it on stage, we on like on the stage, or and she can hold her own. Not necessarily, may not necessarily be like on Broadway, but she could hold her own like on a stage show, doing
Yeah.
something that we know she was kind of getting into acting and all of that. Um, it's this the random horse sound.
Never could square that circle.
You know,
I guess
it's
she's galloping away on a horse
That's what
against
I always
the
assumed. That like, yeah, she's just galloping away on a horse. As the like,
Why
she's in a
not?
cat. I just have always I'm like she's in a castle, galloping away on a horse as the lightning goes by. And she's telling this story about how she's leaving. This man who was her prince. And again, that's the second time that we hear about domestic violence.
Mhm.
In a song on this album. So it's like, and those no's at the end, that like that where it's just very, you're right, very operatic, very like it's a show in a 5 minute song. you know it gives you exactly what the feeling it's supposed to invoke in that time period.
Yeah, that it does. It's if I had to pinpoint the one track I've listened to the most, it's probably that one.
Yeah, same. Same.
Mm.
I think I did when this album came out. I did an actual piece. I choreographed a piece for a modern class to that song. I loved it. It felt, you know, the teen, the late teen, early 20s angst in my
Yeah.
heart. Just that song did it for me.
Didn't you also do a piece to Read Between the Lines or Extra Smooth?
I did to Read Between the Lines.
Yeah, I thought so. And didn't we also sing our hearts out to Paul? I Refuse
Yes,
on speakerphone on the way home from the bar.
we did. I don't even remember why. We were just drunk.
Because.
Just because. So then we move into It's Whatever, which I think is, again, to me, another kind of throwaway song, really, on it. But it's like resignation.
Yeah, and I actually feel like it's placed really well because after the heady subject matter of I Refuse, it the song very much feels like the dawning of a new day.
Right. Like whatever that is fine. I'm over it.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. And
I mean, yeah, because it's whatever, right?
It's whatever. And then we have I Can Be, which is again one of those songs that tells a story.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't like listening to the beginning of the song and then listening to the as the song progresses, you don't know where it's going. You're like, because it could be this very slow melodic, that first couple of notes that happen, and then it becomes this kind of almost like nouveau rock kind of song that's literally about, listen, whatever you want to do, I can be whatever you want me to be. You know what I mean? Like, I'm literally down for whatever.
Yeah, I mean, today that song would be called I Can Be Your Side Piece.
Right. And it's there's a line in that song that's like, see, I gotta look it up. Hold on, guys. I'm coming. I meant to pull up the lyrics for this one because it is definitely again, this is one of those songs that could exist now and nobody would bat an eyelash.
It's got a lot of good lyrics in it too. I'm wondering which one you're gonna zero in on. I find Expensive Wine. I'm drunk off a glass of you.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
Where is it? Love just ain't my thing, but half of you might be enough for two or more. Don't hurt to me any. I was like, listen, like. It's this is literally her being like, look, I know you got somebody else, and I'm not even trying to get in the middle of whatever it is you got over there. Just come on over here and break me off a little bit. And I think it's one of those things, especially in our 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I can't necessarily say for you, but I can say for me, I have been in that position where I'm like, I know you got somebody. I don't care about that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to take you from them. But if it's, come on over here and hang out for a little bit. It's all good. You know what I mean? Not to say that I'm proud of that era of my life. I am. But, it's real.
Filthy, dirty little boy.
Listen, I was the innocent one of the group. You just, went out of town for your dirty stuff.
We all have our ways.
Listen, I'm not at all hating on it. I said you do you. But I also think that, like, if we... And then this moves into... Damn it, what was the next song on this album?
Those Were the Days.
Which I love, because it is literally reminiscing on a relationship.
Yeah.
It's the things that we used to do, we don't do anymore. We're not walking through the park just shooting the breeze. it's what happens when a relationship goes stale, and it doesn't necessarily mean I don't love you anymore. That's not what she's saying at all. It's we don't do the things that we used to do. You don't do the used to things that you did to get me.
You know what? An interesting thought experiment. If we were arranging this album, I might have put Those Were the Days before I Can Be,
Yep.
to sort of tell the story of like, here is someone who has lost the spark, and then she finds someone compelling to her and says, hey, we can work something out here.
I actually would have, if we were telling the story, I would have, playlist, the entire track listing would be different for me. Because We Need a Resolution would be after, would be like before I Refuse. So it would go, I think I would start with the loose rap, because to me that feels like, the beginning, like you're trying, and I see what you're doing, but you can kill all that. You know what I mean? And then I would probably put like Extra Smooth in that part in there too.
Read Between the Lines.
And then Read Between the Lines. Well, no, I would put read Between the Lines before We Need a Resolution.
Okay.
So then I would do like More Than a Woman and Rock the Boat, because those are the Come Here Hither. We're just now getting into this. Then do I Care for You. Then do Read Between the Lines. You Got Nerve. We Need a Resolution. I Refuse. Yep, I Refuse. Ooh. Damn, this is harder than I thought.
Well, yeah, and I can see the challenges that anyone would have faced in arranging this album, right? Because the way that it sort of weaves its way through different vibes is not unlike the way that life seemingly throws things at us, without warning.
Right.
So you can argue that the track list makes sense exactly as it is, but depending on like the narrative, right, the story that you're trying to tell,
right,
it could certainly be arranged very differently to tell a different story.
Because see, this, like, you could really do it as the kind of the opening, height, and then the downfall of a relationship, and that's a completely different track listing than if you're just kind of going through, if you think of these as individual. Maybe two or three people might be one song or two songs here or there, but it's like the life of, the dating life of a person, because then we get to What If, which is like, you're in a relationship with somebody and she's basically like, look, what if I did the things to you that you did that you're doing to me right now? You would lose your shit if you saw me, if you saw me out here, getting numbers and doing all of this stuff, if I entertain the dudes that are trying to check for me, you'd be upset. So why are you doing it? And that's really the bulk of the album. Then depending on what edition you got, you may have other songs on there.
Apple Music has Try Again at the end after What
Yeah,
If.
Apple Music has Try Again at the end. There's Messed Up, which was on the original US. It was a hidden track on the original edition.
Yes, I had that one.
Because baby, there is where you messed up.
You people acting like... Okay, we better not...
Then there's Miss You on there, which kind of goes into the I Care For You era, which is the Posthumous album, which again is one of those songs that's like, ugh. But there are two songs that I wanted to bring up that were not on the original album, but are on the I Care For You album, that are essentially a part of this era. and that is um, Erica Kane
Huh.
and Come Over. And I remember, like, the thing about the Come Over, I remember us being in the Silver Jetta doing the, wait a minute, my battery's low. Let me, and like those two songs, thinking about, now that I'm older and I've, and I actually looked it up. Erica Kane, I was like, oh, it's about like Erica Kane from All My Children, blah, blah, blah. It's actually about cocaine.
Oh.
And when you listen to it in that context, it makes sense.
Okay.
She'd tear whole families apart. She'll shoot a, poison arrow straight from your heart. Nothing to lose, nothing for her to gain. Like
To make an honest man steal from his folks.
right. Turn a working man until he go broke. You know what I mean? Like there's so you're like, wow, like that song, like it would have never crossed my mind that song is about drugs. And I saw that, I was like, that makes a lot of fucking sense. And I'm mad I didn't get it before that. And then I Care for You, like, so the fact that was a song that was left on the cutting room floor tells me, like, who knows what's left in the vault?
Yeah. Who does now?
It's I don't even know, like I don't even have the words to express Come Over. Like it is literally it's that come hither, we're gonna do the nasty kind of song, but it's so sweet and fits in with the rest of the Aaliyah album. That like I can't imagine being like, no, that song's not good enough for the album.
Yeah, you have to wonder who made the call to drop that, but not have, or to drop that, but do include, I don't know, Loose Rap, for example.
Right.
Or well, now like
I mean, there's no bad songs.
One of the lesser tracks. Yeah. That's the thing. It's rare that you can say an album has no skips, but this one you can just leave, just let it play.
Just let it play. But it's like we could have found the room for Come Over. You know what I mean? Especially with there only being three real slow songs. Come Over would have been perfect, especially and I bet you it's probably got to do something with like clearance or someone's vocal clearance on time or something.
Yeah.
Because like
I had heard the criticism. One thing I wonder, I'd heard the criticism about Come Over that either one or two people have said it feels kind of, if you're not an Aaliyah fan, it almost feels whiny. The repetition of Come Over.
Okay.
So I could see how they might be nervous about, would enough people get it?
I mean, I can see that.
I still play the hell out of it.
I love but I I just touched down 2:15, flight 102. Like it's and really what I think also another thing that I think is interesting about that song, although R. Kelly had nothing to do with it, it's got that R. Kelly cadence.
That's true.
There's a specific cadence, especially when he was writing, during the Mr. Big era. There was that cadence that he had with his vocals that he would do, and it's kind of got that same cadence that.
Well, and he loves a call and response, like
Flight 102, and I know it's late, real late. So I'm calling you. It's that. So, and that might be one of the reasons why it was on the cutting room floor, is because it had that cadence, and
Okay.
that was right around the time that it was a little shaky, and we knew, but we didn't want everybody else to know. So maybe it was like we don't want them to think that this is an R. Kelly song, you know.
A good point. It could just be that. Like we keep our distance.
But it was a it's such a good, like, gee, like it's just so good.
Yeah.
It's and we've seen plenty of drag queens pull that song off. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say they pulled it off, but they performed it.
Rude. They made an attempt.
Exactly. Yeah. An attempt was made.
An attempt was made.
Uh,
So any final thoughts on this album? I thought I was gonna try to keep us to half an hour, and I failed.
well, I knew that was gonna come and go. Closing thoughts on the album. Uh, whether you're a longtime Aaliyah fan or perhaps don't know much of her stuff, maybe one or two tracks or maybe none at all, this is a great introduction to her body of work. And it is, if you are a fan of albums that take you on a journey, I think you will find that this certainly does that. So I would encourage anyone to give it a listen.
I would also encourage anyone to give it a listen. Because to me, I think it's a great album. I think it's if you really want to get kind of an album that is definitely an album of its era, but also still feels like it can be played today. Like this is that album.
Except for We Need a Resolution, which you play and they're going to go, oh, that's 2001.
Right. But it's in 2001 it was ahead of its time.
That's very true.
In 2001 people were like, what the,
Yeah.
like what is happening here? Did you sleep on
Yeah.
the wrong side and catching the bad vibe? Yes, I did. Matter of fact. So what I want to do for you guys who are out here out here in the audience, who have been sitting here listening to us for the last 52 minutes, I would like to. What are your thoughts on the Aaliyah album, and are there any albums that you guys want us to dissect in this manner? I actually had someone say an album to me that I would have never thought would have been one that I would be like, that's actually not a bad idea. Madonna's Ray of Light.
Interesting.
I don't hate that idea.
Yeah.
I'm not anyone who knows me knows I'm not a big Madonna fan.
You know, she's always been a challenge for me because I consider myself to be a Madonna fan, but that is despite her best efforts. Because it ain't always easy.
Oh my God, that was funny. Despite her best efforts. Chris, you're absolutely right. Bedtime Stories is a better album.
Bedtime Stories is the album for me.
Bedtime Stories is the album. I agree. I love Bedtime Stories. Here's the thing about Bedtime Stories versus Ray of Light. I think that while I would love Ray of Light, it almost feels like the transition album.
Yeah.
She had a formula that she was doing, because I mean there was it erotica Bedtime Stories, and then there's a one in between the two of those.
Was there? I always thought they were back to back. Jeez.
No, it's erotica Bedtime Stories, and it's the one with Fever on it. Now I gotta be looking up. Now my phone's gonna be pulling up Madonna shit.
Well, no, because Fever was on erotica, I thought.
I believe there's one between the two of them.
Okay.
I'm gonna look it up right now because the one is 63 years old. You said we lost her at Ray of Light.
Could someone please tell her that she is 63 years old?
I'm rude. I'm mad at you that you said we lost her at Ray of Light. There are some really good songs on Ray of Light. Not very many. Okay, nope, you were right. So we had Erotica, Bedtime Stories, and then Ray of Light.
Yeah.
So those three, I think, are the three albums that if someone said, "What's a Madonna?" True Blue can go to hell. I hate, like, why would you do that to any of us?
I'm going to tell you, I refuse to review anything by Madonna except for the Dick Tracy soundtrack. And that I will do a full 2 hours on.
You know what, though? I will say this. Do you know which one I would do for no other reason, but I don't think anyone has ever done anything with it before? Hard Candy. And Hard Candy is not a terrible album. It is a terrible album for someone at the age of Madonna.
That is true.
You know,
deeply uncomfortable.
Deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, deeply uncomfortable. It should have been made by someone 20 years younger than her.
You know, Ray of Light would be an interesting one because we could have the debate about who copied who with that album versus Cher's Believe.
Oh.
So, there could be something there.
There could be something there. Look at us. You see, look at us. We're already giving y'all hints for what's next. Actually, no, what's going to happen is it's going to be time for us to do Secrets. Tony Braxton's Secrets, which is Josh's favorite album. And I can honestly say that I have never listened to that album all the way through.
I'd have slap you in your face.
I know all of the songs from the album.
Yeah.
But I've never actually sat down and listened to it all the way through.
It's good stuff.
Because Tony Braxton makes music to sleep to.
I will say that my go to sleep mix that I put together did end with the last track of Secret.
Tony Braxton.
In the Late of Night.
Did you say Something to Remember? Chris Sandberg, you go to bed. Go to bed, Wig. Tony Braxton, like, they're all of her songs are great. Don't get me wrong. They're all fantastic. But they're all the slow tempo. Up until, Breathe. I think Breathe.
That's true.
He wasn't man enough. They were all, like, slow tempos. And it's like... I can't do.
Yeah, for someone like you, that's got to be torture.
Huh?
For someone like you, that's got to be torture because you love a peppy little beat.
I love a beat. I love something I can shake it some too.
Yeah.
But it's. I recognize the goodness in it, regardless of whether it's something that is my taste.
It must have been hell for you to have to go out to the club and like ride in the car with me because like you're trying to get pumped up to go out dancing, and I'm blasting Spanish guitar.
No, not at all. Because at some point I would always just take over.
That's true.
Oh, we're gonna listen to this, and then we would. But our musical tastes were so similar that it was like, oh yeah, that's my jam. You know what I mean? Like we just did that, and I think that's why doing this with you is so much fun, because our musical tastes are so similar. There's a couple of divides. I think there'll be some things that I'll be like, okay, let's do this album, and you'll be like, I've not heard it. I'm gonna have to listen to it, and then there'll be some that you will do the same for me, and we'll learn some things because I really want to do like some Michel and Miguel Cello, which I love.
I do know.
Some like obviously we're gonna do some brand new heavies and some Vivian Green and all of those things that we know that we enjoy, but I want to get past all of these, popular albums first. Then we could be like, let's dig into crates, yo.
Yeah.
Let's give them what was the girl that name of that you had this album that you let me borrow. She died a little while ago. What the fuck is the name of that album? You were in love with it.
Was it Gail Addison?
No.
No? There was Aya?
Aya. Not A. Was it A? Is it Aya? Empires. She did the song Empires.
I wonder who that could be. Don't know. I was listening to a lot of stuff back then.
Bring me men. Bring me men to match my mountains. Lamia. Lamia is her name. The album was Learning from Falling.
Yeah.
You were into this album, and I tried really hard. I tried so hard.
I know.
Because I love you.
Black Butterfly.
Granique. I love that album.
Granique would be a good, if we want to go for deep cuts, that's a good deep cut.
Yes. Absolutely. Like that's on the list. Ooh, Lena. I remember Lena too.
Yeah, that's got to be Chris saying that.
Yeah.
Lena would be a good choice.
See, look at us. All right, we're gonna end this. We're gonna end this right now. We had an hour, girl. We could sit here and do this all day. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Joshua, thank you so much for being my wonderful co-host and my master of music.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And we will be doing this again soon. As I said, we said we were going to do these like once a month because, Josh is busy and got shit to do. It's a special guest, a special favor for me. Don't forget, guys, if you are interested in helping us grow, there's that link down below for the fundraiser. Love you, Chris. You're amazing and wonderful. Mwah. And that's all I got for tonight. Peace out, homies.